Hi, my name is Jessica from Mocktail Fossander, and today I'm going to answer the question, if someone follows me, do I need to follow them back using the magic of sticky notes? So who to follow is a question that's discussed frequently on the internet, and there's different strategies that work well for different people and brands, but one thing to keep in mind, never follow spam, just don't. Also, you want your audience to be engaged, no matter what strategy you're implementing. Think in real life, if you could boast hundreds of friends, but you didn't feel comfortable having a conversation with any of them, they're kind of useless friends. So one strategy that many use, especially on Twitter, is following for relationships. Now this means if you're a real person and you follow them, no matter what you tweet about or what your content is or who you are, they're going to follow you back. So this is mostly for making connections. It's kind of a way to start many relationships or get your foot in the door, a way of acknowledging that you two are connected in some way. Now, this has been done on very large scales. I've seen some Twitter users that have 400,000 followers and they follow 400,000 people. It can build your numbers faster, if that's something that you're looking for, but that should never be the end game in social media. It's not a number war. But what also will happen is if you're following 400,000 people, the 400,000 first person that you follow isn't going to feel as special as if you were only following 100 people and then start following that person. It devalues what a follow means from you. So in many cases, a follow, when you're using this strategy, becomes mostly symbolic. It's more of a way to acknowledge that you have a connection with that person rather than saying that you're interested in their content. Likely, if you're following that many people, you're not seeing what they're posting. Now, if you use this strategy, a lot of people will use Twitter lists. And that's a way that they can still stay engaged with the topics that interest them. And even if you're not using this strategy, I highly recommend using Twitter lists because they're very useful. Now, it also goes both ways in that if you're following a lot of people that are using that strategy, they're also likely following you, meaning that they're not seeing your tweets. So your actual engaged audience can be very different than what your numbers or your follower numbers show. So keep that in mind. You might show that you're being followed by thousands of people, but if you're not in their lists or they're not really engaged with your brand, they're only there as a number and they're not that useful to you. So you want to build up your engagement from your audience. Now, if you have lots of followers, likely some of those people will follow you and be engaged in your brand, so always make sure that you're engaging your audience in that way. Now, a second strategy that many use is to follow for content. Now, this is great when you're viewing that platform as a news source. If it's your way of staying connected with topics that interest you, or local events, or your industry, following because you think that someone has value to add to you is a great way to go about it. This is especially useful as if you use a mobile device. For example, on Twitter, their lists are useful, but they're more time-consuming to get at than your follower feed. So if you're frequently checking your Twitter on mobile, quickly you don't have a lot of time to go through your lists, this may be the way for you to go. It's also useful for platforms such as Pinterest or Tumblr, or any other platform that the content is really number one. Now, this is likely going to build a slower follower base. Your numbers will build slower, but it's also going to lead to having a more engaged relationship, because if you're only following 100 people and one of those people only is following 100 people and follows you, you're going to see all of your updates and you're going to be able to weigh in on them. So if you're actively engaged with this audience, then you're going to see stronger relationships, although there's fewer people. Now, I've heard a lot of people say that you should really stick to one of these strategies or maybe a different strategy of your own and not mix them. But for my personal profile, I follow both blogs and content that I'm interested in and a few close friends. The real danger is if you go to either extreme and then you switch back and forth, because that doesn't make sense. If you have 400,000 followers, you're not going to see an interesting blog with content. It's just not going to be useful to you. And if you only follow users that you're interested in for content, and then you follow a few people that you don't know and don't post anything relevant to you, it's just going to be annoying. So just be smart about whatever strategy you're using, and I hope that these principles were helpful.